Hello, welcome to Betfair's Cricket Trade Talk Ashes edition, I should say. As I welcome Darren Parkin. How are you, mate?
Going well, yeah. It was an amazing way to retain the Ashes, I guess, for Australia. I mean, we've spoken the whole way through about how close the series has been. This is the only Test match that wasn't close, and there was no result, and that's enough for us to put it in the back pocket.
You hate to see it, don't you? What makes it more enjoyable is how much the English have just lost their crap. They just absolutely don't know what to do with themselves. They're whinging.
They think we've retained the Ashes because it rained. I'd argue we retained the Ashes because we won the first two tests. It's probably a reasonable assessment.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think certain people are realising that Twitter and social media is forever. And Piers Morgan back in 2013 celebrating when rain ruled us out of, I think it was an Old Trafford Test match as well. We lost that series, and that was the one that officially sealed our fate. Didn't seem to bother them then, nor did it bother them when they won a World Cup on boundaries. A rule so bad that it was changed within weeks of that tournament. So, look, fair play. They've been the better side in the fourth test, but it rained. And it always rains in Old Trafford. I think Old Trafford is the test venue. It's the second most days lost to test cricket ever is at Old Trafford. Sydney is actually the worst. So.
Cop that, Sydney. You're in the lay bin. Yes. Well, remember all the talks about moving the Sydney Test last summer?
Sydney Sport is in the lay bin. Like, it rains all the time.
Let's just put Sydney in the lay bin.
Yeah, I think so.
It rains twice as much in Sydney as in Melbourne. But anyway, here to pot English, not our own. Their selective memory is an utter joke. Like, they just pick and choose what to remember. Hypocrisy from the English has been nothing short of ridiculous. So all series, really. They came out in the first two tests and felt like they won them. They're 2-1 down and they're whinging.
I don't know what the moral scoreboard is. The actual scoreboard is 2-1, but obviously they had the moral victory in the first test. But look, I mean, it's been an excellent series, and I think the spirit between both sides has been pretty good. It's just been some of the post stuff. I mean, I could editorialise, but no one could really say it better than Gerard Whateley did on SEN yesterday. It's floating around on socials if you want to listen. It was really a case of, we're not going to celebrate the fourth test. We didn't play well. We got belted. We were lucky to get away with it. No doubt it rained. We were probably going to lose that test, I think, by most measurements, had it have continued on. But it didn't. But what we are celebrating is that we've retained the Ashes. And we've retained the Ashes because we hold the Ashes, which means that a drawn series was all we needed. So,
and we're 2-1 up.
Exactly.
Gerard Whateley's speech was fantastic. He summed it up perfectly. What did you make? Was there I'm just wondering whether Australia's mental aspect, we expected the weather. Did Australia go into the fourth test playing a bit hesitantly, kind of almost hoping, I know our selection almost played that as well, but was Australia focusing on the draw, and did that have an impact on how we went about playing the fourth test?
Possibly, and you mentioned that I know they didn't pick Nisa, but they batted a long way down with the two all-rounders almost to bat time. And perhaps, because, I mean, on the first day, they had a lot of chances to build a big score, but they had, I think it was Marnus 51, Marsh 51, Head 48, Smith 41, Warner 32. No one went on, and it felt like we'd left 100 runs out there, and then England made 600 or whatever it was and confirmed that was the case. But I think in the back of everyone's minds was this is a 3-day test, and it was almost like we felt we've got to get to stumps on day 3, and if we're still in the test, then we won't lose.
A couple of things on that. Let's not forget England have won 4 tosses, so they've had the upper hand going into every test match as it is. Do you think they did the right thing in electing to bowl? Because then, obviously, they were dictated to by how long Australia batted in the second innings as well. So we could have kept batting, especially in the first innings. But was that an aggressive play? Was it a defensive play? And then I'll ask you about the declaration as well.
I think, maybe they felt that their best chance of batting once was to bat second, maybe. They thought that maybe it was overcast on day 1. They might be able to get Australia 4 for 80 odd, which they weren't, but Australia were losing wickets fairly frequently, and then they'd get the better of the batting conditions and then try to bowl Australia out late. And they actually had a pretty good chance. I mean, if you had a set at 4 for 113 at stumps on day 2, stumps on day 3 rather, that they would get a full session in on day 4, you would have thought that we might be in some bother, but we only lost the 1 wicket in that session. So
they were hoping for 10, 15 overs to roll Australia, and they took one in 30.
Yeah.
So.
And You did mention the declaration. Look, in the end, I'm not sure those extra overs would have mattered. Plus, you would then have taken the runs off, which means that we would have been more likely to make them bat again, which we probably would have done anyway. We're about 50 runs away from making them bat again, which would have added more time. But they were trying to get Johnny Bairstow that 100. And there's the other point too. The amount of singles he pinched when the ball was dead, in inverted commas, was interesting on that in that last partnership with Jimmy Anderson.
Well, I'm putting that in the low bit. Australia's tactics late in the piece. You've got Broad down one end and Anderson down one end, and we bowl bouncers and they take a single through to the keeper. After the first two times it's happened, do you think Australia could clue up that it was going to happen again? You got your first ball to your tail enders, and you bowl a bouncer, and then you're surprised that it's happened again, that they've run through. Like, Carey, take your glove off. Don't bowl a bouncer first ball. Actually bowl one on the stumps. I reckon they bowled 4 balls on the stumps in an hour of cricket against the tail ender, and one of those 4 got a wicket.
Yeah, make Broad and Anderson either hit over or through the field. If the field is in around them, force them to play dangerous shots, because their sole objective is to try to score quickly and get Bairstow on strike. So Bairstow's going to be running. The whole purpose was to get him 100. They had enough runs. They didn't need to do anything else other than that. So you knew exactly what England were trying to do. And yeah, it's another. I think Steve Waugh was 99 not out in an Ashes test when, ironically, his brother Mark was a runner for Craig McDermott, who was injured, and Steve Waugh, I think, ran Mark out by accident and was left stranded 99 not out. So he finds himself in that company, Johnny Bairstow.
Fascinating stuff. Yeah, you make a really good point. The first innings, it looked like a 550-run pitch. It was very flat, which is surprising that they planned that pitch knowing there was rain around. I think that's a mistake on their behalf. They've almost challenged the way that they've prepared decks and prepared them to suit their cricket, and then the 4th test they need a result and they produce a 600-run pitch. Should
they have declared, they declared 280, or they got bowled out 280 ahead, should they have declared 100 ahead? Almost to say, look, we know we're going to have to bat again, but we've got to advance this game quickly.
At least they can do that.
Yeah, exactly.
At least they can come into the 4th innings and make 100 off 10 overs if they need to. Marnus, the finger's been pointed at him a bit. He's been disappointing. He's got out in disappointing manners, especially he's had starts all series. And I mentioned this last Ashes trade talk, the fact that everyone was blaming Warner because he comes in at number 3, but he's made those starts. It's not as if he's got out cheaply for under 10. He's made 30 regularly. He just hasn't gone on with it. First innings, same thing again with all of Australia, but second innings, it was great to see him get 100.
Yeah, it was. And I know he kept going out to guys like Moeen Ali and Joe Root, which would have annoyed him, I think, that he would survive their pretty good pace attack and would go to those guys. I also loved his honesty in press, Marnus. He's pretty innocent in that sense. Where they said, if you get a full day's play in, could you score quickly and go ahead? And he's like, what are you talking about? And they were like, try to win the test. He's like, no chance. Which I thought was which was good, because I think most of us probably felt, no, we can't win the test. But I just love the way he handled that question.
Very funny, very funny. I want to get to the LBW just quickly, and a couple of back or lay questions. 6th day, we saw at the Test Championship.
Yeah.
We heard a couple of ridiculous questions, but are you backing or laying a reserve day?
Look, I'm not against it, but on one hand, we're talking about reserve days, which is fine, but there's also a bit of a push around to make Test matches 4 days to almost go the other way. So, look, I think under normal circumstances, the way England play, they won't need a 6th day. But I don't know, what was the weather like on day 6 in England? Would it have rained again anyway? I think it's hard to predict with Manchester sometimes.
I'm laying that. I don't think we need a reserve day. I think it'll change the way the game is played as well. If there is rain around, it forces a result. If teams need a win, it's why you go 2-1 up in a series. You have the advantage. So I'm laying that. I'm backing or laying, Darren, the commentary from the English team and the supporters around the rain and the celebration. You touched on it briefly.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that Australia is celebrating retaining the Ashes, not the drawn test. So yeah, look, England would quite rightly, without criticism, would quite rightly do the same thing if the shoe was on the other foot. If they won the Ashes that way, no hard feelings at all. You celebrate the fact that you're in front in the series, rain has assisted you through, but The reality is England have won 3 of the last 20 Ashes test matches played. So I don't think they're that unlucky, to be truthful. I've actually enjoyed the way they played, and I've really enjoyed the cricket, but yeah, there's 1,000 reasons why they haven't got the urn, and the rain is one very, very small one.
Time for the power play. We'll get through some markets in a second, but just tactics.
Yeah.
England obviously won the toss, bowled. No team, I think it was 20 years, no teams won a test match there and bowled first.
Okay.
So to do that was very interesting. Australia's bowling performance, what did you make of that?
Yeah, I think we were a bit one-dimensional. I think given the quality of our attack, as you mentioned earlier, we were a bit short, and that was probably the case in the third test as well. Even the second test, which we actually won. I think, yeah, we were a little bit... We took away a lot of modes of dismissals. I think they worked out Crawley in the first 3 tests, so he'd been dismissed 6 times. I think 5 were caught in the slips or caught behind, and you're bowling bounces to him, which has completely taken that mode of dismissal out of the game. So, yeah, it seemed odd. I think we removed some of our best chances of getting a lot of their top order players out in the 4th test. But in saying that, I mean, Pat Cummins, what have you made of his captaincy? Because the reality is he's just retained the Ashes in England, which doesn't happen all that often, so he deserves credit for that.
If Australia win the final test,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the first time in 20 years we've won a series in England.
First in Steve Waugh, yeah.
So, no doubt Australia are a fantastic team. To be 2-1 up heading into the 5th test, you've got Pat Cummins on the back. There's been a lot of criticism around his tactics. I tend to agree. I think Australia have lacked plans. We know that Bairstow is going to come out and attack, and we shouldn't have to wait until a break in the match to reset and actually come up with a plan. We've had sessions where we've looked absolutely hapless and had no idea, and then we've gone to lunch and come up with a plan and then stuck to that after lunch or after break. Like, Australia shouldn't need to have a break in play and consult. We should be able to do that on the fly. I think that's my biggest criticism with Cummins.
Is it ultra critical to say that we have effectively got ourselves into the position we're in simply because we have better players, not because of any other reason than star power, if that makes sense? We haven't necessarily outthought them or been better tactically. We've just had better players, and therefore,
Agreed.
yeah.
It's been a funny series so far that no team's really dominated an innings with the ball or the bat until obviously England did with the 4th test, but no team. Usually in a series, a team will get bowled out for 150 or a team will make 550.
Yep.
It seems like it's been so even, and the pitches have probably been a bit of that, and the way that Bazball's been played, and Australia haven't capitalised on making starts. It's been a bit of a funny series.
Yeah, 09 when we lost the Ashes over there when Ponting was captain, when we lost 2-1. I think we were pretty good in that series, but we had 2 days, one at Lords and one at the Oval, where we got bowled out for 140 and 150, I think, and it cost us both matches.
Yep.
We haven't really had any of those. It's been pretty hard fought the whole way through without one side just smacking one in a test match.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Let's get to the markets. So we headed to the 5th test at the Oval. England, $2.44 currently on betfair.com.au. Australia, $2.74. The draw, $4.30, Darren. So it looks to be a little bit of rain around, but not as much as there was at Manchester. What's really interesting is you've got a few different markets here with the same result. So obviously we've got series markets. So series at 2-2. That's at $2.46, which is interesting. You've got series winner. So drawn series, again, England need to win to draw the series. That's the same price as the win market. So you can actually take the bet and look at the different markets. So you've got 2-2, you've got series result.
So you only get 2-2 if England wins.
Correct. You only get a drawn series if England win. And then you've got the England match as well. So series winner, Australia $1.67, the draw $2.44. So that's essentially backing Australia and the draw in the series market.
Australia wins regardless of which of those 2 outcomes.
So $1.67 there. If England win, $2.44. Series score, Australia 3-1, $2.70. Draw 2-2 at $2.46. And Australia 2-1.
And you compare that Australia 2-1 market. So the drawn test is $4.30. Australia 2-1 is $4.20. So a draw is Australia 2-1. It's the same result. So
there's different ways you can skin the cat here.
Yeah.
A top Australian series run scorer, Khawaja goes in at $1.67. Travis Head $6.40. Steve Smith been disappointing this series at $14. Marnus Labuschagne $6.40 in the back of his fantastic 4th test. England's run scorer market's wide open as well at the moment. Ben Stokes, $2.72. Zach Crawley about that $2.50 mark, and Joe Root, $4.70.
I'm pretty sure Crawley is now the leading run scorer in the series, based on that 189. So, and he'd been okay in other matches with 60s and 50s and 40s and things like that. So he's narrowly edged himself in front of Stokes. I still feel that Joe Root, who made 80 in the fourth test, made 100 in the first test at 460. I'm not sure how far behind he is, but I think he's close enough to run that down potentially.
And interestingly, Joe Root traded as low as $1.41 in that top England run scorer markets. The top series wicket taker, Stuart Broad's one up, I believe, on Pat Cummins at the moment. Broad's $2.24, I think 16. Pat Cummins 15 at $2.50. Mitchell Starc 3 behind at $6.20. So all
not
three.
Bad on Mitch, I don't think. I mean the Oval can take spin, but it's not like Murphy. I don't think Murphy's. I think he'll play, but I don't think he'll take 11 wickets or anything like that. So there's still going to be plenty out there for the quicks.
Take the new ball, Darren. Where are you heading with bets heading into the fifth test?
Probably playing around those run scorer markets and just looking at value in the wicket taker market. So Starc, you look at who's just off the pace. So Starc, does he have a good test and get himself up there? And can Joe Root, who started the series so well, still feel deep down he's their most reliable batsman? So does he eke out an 80 or a 90 and lead the run scoring for England? We've got those bets riding on Australia 3-1, so obviously happy to sit there with that. That was a pretty reasonable price at the start, so you just hope you could almost lay that off in any other way. You could look at England or draw and just cover those other losses, and you're still going to make, I think, a little bit of a profit. So having 3-1 in the back pocket is handy. Just
on the runs, Zach Crawley's made 385 so far. Usman Khawaja 377, Ben Stokes 360, Joe Root about 70 behind there, 69 behind.
So not bad, I think, for, it's pretty even. Even Travis Head, that's surprising that he's won back on 315. He's been pretty consistent without making a massive score. 350s and a high score of 77, whereas obviously everybody around him has made a big 100. So,
and it's amazing that, and we talk about the fact that there hasn't been a dominant display with the bat. You go through the Ashes averages. There's Zach Crawley's 55 average. Usually someone in a series would average 80 or 90 or something like that, and it just goes to show how even and probably non-dominant with the bat this series.
And the rare benchmark, not rare benchmark, but a usual benchmark in a 5-test series would be someone makes 500 runs. We're unlikely to get that unless either Crawley or Khawaja makes 100 in this test, I would think.
Betting strategies for me, I'm watching the weather. We're filming this a couple of days out, but I'm still keen to be against the draw. We head into the fifth test where England want to draw the series. It's still, I know Australia retained the Ashes, but it's still well and truly on at the moment. The fifth test, it's definitely not a dead rubber. I'm against the draw again at $4.30. I think we'll get a result, and I think England will be trying hard to win. So they'll be ultra competitive. They don't mind if they lose 3-1 from here.
No, that's right. We know difference. That they're an aggressive side, but so England have only lost. So not counting Australia's win against India. So when England have played the opposition, they've won 4 of the last 5 matches at the Oval. The only loss was to India in 2021. So had a pretty good record there recently. Before that, not so much. They lost to Pakistan, Australia and South Africa in a 4-year period, 2012 to 15. But since then, they've had a pretty good record at the grounds.
It's called Trade Talk for a reason. Now, I heavily recommended backing Australia to retain the Ashes. We've got that right. So we've claimed that victory. We've got Australia's series winner in the first Ashes Trade Talk. We talked about that. They're $1.67 now, so you can trade out of that position or just level up, back the drawn series, potentially and trade throughout. Hopefully our viewers have got something on Australia to win the series. We're pretty confident about that. Leading wicket takers, I was very much in the Pat Cummins boat. He's one behind, and I've recommended last episode to hedge on Stuart Broad, so I hope Starc doesn't come in and take 10 for the match or something like that and knock us off, because I've backed Cummins and also taken a bit of Broad ahead of last test as well. Cummins is a little bit of a concern. He hasn't bowled well in the last 3 innings or so, which is unfortunate, and that's to his own admission. a lot of commentary around, is he burnt out? We've played 6 tests in 7 weeks.
So it's also hard for a fast bowler to captain a team. It doesn't happen that often.
There's
so
a lot of talk about that.
It is challenging, yeah.
So he's got to play. I love the fact that he's acknowledged he hasn't bowled well. So I think he'll come out and give everything in the final test, and then he can have a break. And I think he'll still be the leading wicket taker of the series.
And it's pretty big for Australia. As you say, we were in this position 4 years ago, up 2-1, lost the 5th test, which was frustrating. We probably didn't make the right decision at the toss and went away 2-all. We'd retained the Ashes, but had a chance to win the series. And here we are again. We obviously haven't won in England since 2001. So it's a pretty big test for us if we can close it out 3-1 or even, survive with a draw and win the series. I think it's a pretty big one for us, and
it's memorable.
Yeah.
And you go down as a winning Ashes
Correct.
series captain for Cummins and walk away with winning a series in England. That's what you are judged by.
And it buries all the talk anyway. If we win this test 3-1, it doesn't matter what would have happened in the Old Trafford match anyway.
They still think they won the first 2 tests.
I think so. What do you think Australia will do? As we say, in the past, Australia have at times picked 2 spinners at the Oval, which obviously they're not going to do now, but I think they'll pick 1. So does Murphy come back in? And do England do anything around their veterans? Do they look at it and go, okay, we've given Moeen Ali a chance, now we might pick a young spinner and just have a look at them now that the series is done? What do they do with Anderson and Broad? Is it a farewell, or I don't know? It'd be interesting.
Really interesting with Anderson. I would think he probably doesn't play if they're picking their best side.
Yeah, true.
Or if they're trying to win. But I do think it's his swan song, and I think they'll play him. So I think they'll go in unchanged. Wood plays. There was only a 3-day test last series. I think Wood, if it was a 5-day grueling test to play 3 tests in a row for Wood might be tough, but they're coming off a 3-day test, so I think he'll play. I reckon they'll go in unchanged.
The other thing in your favour with Cummins on that too is that Wood and Wokes have bowled so well in the last few tests that they're going to take some wickets and probably deny Broad, a 5 I would think.
Well, you give Broad 2 for Warner's wickets twice.
Yeah, that's true.
Interesting with Australia. I think they have to play Murphy. It's just who comes out, and if Marsh is fit, Green's the one to go.
Probably, yeah.
You can't drop Marsh.
No.
He's been incredible. He finished that second innings. Not out, obviously. He was very good there. He made 100 in his first test this series. I think he has to play. I just hope he's fit.
Yeah, and he got 50 in the first innings. And then it just comes down to how many overs can he get out of him? Is that a deciding factor? If you think he can't bowl but he can bat, do you then pick Green instead? Or it's an interesting one, but they've got plenty of options. Do they give Nisa a test and rest someone? But
Warner has to play.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll play Nisa for a 5th test. I think they'll just make the one change. I think it'll be Murphy in, Green out.
Yep, I think so. Do we ever see... So, Warner clearly won't play in England again because he's already forecast his retirement this coming summer, but just trying to think of the age of others. So, Smith's 34, so he'd be 38 next time we tour England. Hazelwood, Stark, even Lyon, who's out of the side injured. There's a few guys you always wonder, do we see them in England again?
It's a great point. It's actually a scary thought.
Yeah,
we go to England potentially next series and we might not have half our side.
Yeah, that's right. Whereas obviously we've got some younger faces. Travis Head's pretty young and Green is very young. And
Mitch Marsh is still, 30?
Relative. Usman's, I think, probably capable of being around then. Maybe, he's been playing Test cricket for a while. And Marnus, I think, is young enough. So there should still be some experience there, but England will certainly be different. There'll be no Broad or Anderson, probably even next time they're in Australia. Then you look at Joe Root, who'd be early to mid-30s. And
bit of change coming. Been a good episode, mate. This is our last show. Come on, Australia in the 5th test. I think we're a better team than England. I think hopefully we can win a toss. I had the toss marked $1.40. For England to win it, getting in the 4th test. So we got that as a fill up for subscribers. Been a pleasure, mate.
It has been a pleasure. Do we need to apologise for retaining the Ashes? It feels like we should. They've made us feel guilty along the way. I don't know if we have to say, look, sorry about that. We shouldn't have won those first 2.
Piers Morgan getting the lay bin. Everyone in England getting the lay bin. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Come on, Australia. Win the 5th test. 3-1. That's the result everyone's after. It's been a pleasure. We'll be back with Trade Talk soon.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.